What is up, gang? I'm going to be doing a track walkthrough or breakdown of my track What Do I Even Say? This one was mostly a jam. So I had my Electron stuff, I had an Octatrack, a Digitone, a Digitakt, and I had my Digitakt, which was responsible for the drums, and I had my Digitone, which was responsible for some melodic elements, and then on top of that, I also had my Novation Peak, which was doing the majority of the synth work. I've got a couple of videos which I will link in the description below. But it was mostly just a stereo jam. So I'll show you what that stereo jam actually sounded like. I've got this main thing, but the Octatrack was just doing effects and just doing like funky, weird stuff, reverbs, beat, repeat sort of stuff. And then with the Digitakt, the best thing about the Digitakt is that you can have drum sequences going and you do track mutes with the buttons, and you can kind of make it sound quite dynamic by turning things on and off. And lol, put this on stoned. Probably don't need that one. So I had the Digitakt going and I was just doing track mutes. And you can emulate this in Ableton, except you need to make separate MIDI tracks. Oh, this is Max, by the way, if you can see him. Hello, Max. You can make a separate MIDI track that goes to your audio. That goes to another MIDI. Look, it's just really complicated to do in Ableton. I don't really like doing it. That's why I like having a Digitakt or an MPC, which does the same track muting thing. It mutes the MIDI, which is different to muting the audio. So you get the tail end of the audio. So as soon as if you've got like a kick drum going and you mute the audio like you would on Ableton, you just cut off the audio, which doesn't really sound as good. So this is what the jam kind of sounded like. And I had everything, is literally, as I said, it was a stereo image. It was all going through the Octatrack into my audio interface. And Max is tired of me talking. It was going into the audio interface. I'd recorded like a few 20-minute takes of me just jamming, and I just took the best bits and spliced them together. As you can see here, these are all like different colored bits from those different takes. So yeah, this is, I also had like the synth running through here. All I was really doing with the Novation Peak with my synthesizer was just playing around with the filter and then playing around with the delay and the reverb. This is just like a testament to like simplicity is key with these things. Like I like using hardware because it makes me just use what I have. And Max is finding treats. You are eating treats, aren't you? So I had these like a very simple setup, and was just playing around with them, and I feel like the track had a lot more body and had a lot more like character, but in terms of like a compositional point of view, let's just go into. Also on top of that, I had my Behringer Model D, which is a bass synthesizer, which I used as a bass in this. And I would say the one thing to take away from this is I had a keyboard at the time. It was a 61 key keyboard, and the Novation Peak has 8 voices. So I was able to do some chords. I had like a MIDI channel that I was turning on and off from my Digitone connected to my Novation Peak. One MIDI track had just like the chords, The next track had like another melody on top, but it sounded like another synth, really. So I was just utilizing what was there, and it also meant like tonally it was like quite similar. But that was just a limitation. That's kind of what I was working with and just playing around with. So pretty simple. Obviously there's a vocal on there, which is coming from the Digitakt. I had a vocal which I got from Splice again, and sliced that into 64 pieces on the Digitakt, and then I just had it on my keyboard, and I was just like stabbing away at that. So where do we go from here? Well, once I got like the crux of it and made all these like variations and stuff, I sort of just started like piecing it together. It went from like a 20-minute long thing down to a 12-minute thing, down to a 9-minute, down to, what is it now? It's like a however many minutes. It's like probably like 5 or 6 minutes or something. And I just took the best bits. It doesn't go like, it's not a very like crazy song structure here. It's like introducing the elements here with the I wanted it to be easy to mix in as a DJ, because I am a DJ and I like tracks that are easy to mix in. So having just a vocal and drums makes that easier, and it's a pretty long intro with just drums and all that sort of stuff. So before I get onto the other tracks that I added on here, some little things to keep in mind. The track has these bits where it kind of sounds like things are just going like in and out and kind of like back and forth and kind of like spinning around a little. It kind of sounds like they're spinning around, but playing with volume is something that isn't really done with dance music. And this wasn't on purpose. This was just something I came across when I was doing this, and it sounded really interesting. Go back here because these are two separate takes. So that was like the main bit that I had. This next little like breakdown bit. So I'm just concentrating on like the stereo recording that I did. But the breakdown here, which I'll show you right now. That's not something I recorded as like one take, obviously. I've done it like a lot of like automation here because it's very hard to do just as like a live take. I really wanted to perfect this bit. And this took like probably like the better part of a year to really, really nail. And I'm still not even 100% happy with it, but what I will say, just as a general tip, if you're 80% of the way there, to avoid perfectionism, 80% of the way is 100% of the way. So just move on, basically move on. Stop thinking about your ex and just bloody move on. So cool, we've got this like cool little breakdown here. And what I've done to create this breakdown is use pieces of the original recording. So in this track here, I've got so I've just like spliced that on top, and these are kind of like fading in and out. This track, let's have a look at what this track is. It's a little riser, so in the context of that sounds like this. And then we've got another element which I've just chucked down here from the main recording. sure why that's making a difference. Oh, it's because I've got this routed over here. Hang on, let's, so what I've done, I'll just explain what I've done here. When I've exported this project, I've split it up into like a few elements to then do like a final mix down. And I separated the effects, so I was able to just record the whole like bus like that, but the bus in this situation is creating a little bit of latency. So for the good of the production world, I'm just going to route that to the main so there isn't any difference. Cool, so the effects are now in sync. So yeah, again, got these little like elements in here. Got a resample on this track, which I actually can't remember exactly what I've done, what I did with this, but I just resampled something that happened in the main recording, and then I think I put it into a sampler, and then I made like another riff with it, and it works really well. I just had this like a nice little bit of detail just on the side. I'll take that out. You don't have as much space, or is that stereo effect basically? So next tip that I would say is that it helps to keep things incestuous when you're resampling, or if you're trying to come up with ideas. Resample what's already in the project, because it's already going to be in key, it's already going to have the same tonality, so it's just going to work a lot better than trying to find like another sample somewhere else, if you can find the right spot. So yeah, resampling a bit, chucking into a simpler, chopping it all up, and then finding a nice little riff, or like maybe throw it to an arpeggiator or something and throw some effects onto it. It'll blend better. It'll blend better basically. Sorry to say the word incestuous on this video, but you know what I mean. So then I've got, for this riser, I am focusing just on this like breakdown part because there is like quite a bit of detail here. I've got which I would have recorded from the, it sounds like I've recorded that from the reverb maybe of the track, and then I've reversed it, and I've thrown in like this little LFO filter thing just to build up a little bit of intensity. So you're listening to this. Cool. And then a little bit of white noise riser here. Everyone knows a little bit of white noise riser effects. Just this. Cool. I've got a paper towel sample. I don't know how much you'd be able to hear that, but cool nonetheless. And then moving over here, go to the delay, and I've used that here because in this section here, this is like kind of like the weird breakdown. Now in the video that I've got in the description from my, it's probably going to be from my Instagram, this little bit was actually a live jam. Like that, this whole thing was up the top, but the brilliant part about having an Octatrack is being able to do all those like little swells and those imperfections. Having to doing the automation like that by hand. Oh god, I never do it. That's why this track sounds like, it probably sounds as like dynamic and like interesting as any other, or more than any other track that I've made, because I wasn't thinking, I was improvising. So one thing I would try and take away from that is that if you can find ways to map MIDI or if you can use like hardware and just record just straight audio and just jam and just stuff around, then you're going to get these more like human breathing elements. That's what I think is probably like my favorite part about making this track, and like my pride and joy of having made this track. But with this audio here, why I've used this delay track down the bottom, which I'll show you again, is because this recording here sounded like this. It just didn't really work. It just sounded kind of crap, to be honest. So I filled in that space by putting this little delay track in there. Then I was having troubles with the bass having enough impact in certain sections because, as I said, it was all recorded as a stereo thing. I didn't have the chance to mix everything properly. So this is the downside, obviously, to recording these stereo jams, because you're going to come back and you're going to be like, oh, I wish I did this, I wish I did that, or this needs to come in. So by doing a long take, you kind of can make sure that elements, you can grab different elements and splice them around a bit. But if the mix isn't sounding good from the get-go, then you're a little bit screwed. But I was quite lucky in this, where the only stuff that I really had to do with the original file didn't use any of that, was a little bit of EQing by the looks of it. A little bit of EQing here, which is some dynamic EQing. So I would have just had some troubles with these areas. Let's have a listen to what it sounds like without the EQ on first. So I think the low end was just a little bit too much. I was recording it with some loud micro speakers and just having a grand old time in my studio. But then when I came out of it, I was like, oh my God, the low end is just like a little bit too much. And at the time, I was just getting fatigued by subs in any genre. So yeah, that's kind of where this comes into play. Got like a little bit of a shelving EQ, 5 dB, wow. And then just trying to take off a little bit of this high-end stuff. I'll show you what that sounds like. Everyone likes. Oops, I put that back on. But yeah, these are all just kind of like bouncing around. Oh, that's not a dynamic EQ. This one is a dynamic EQ. Yeah, the one in the yellow is a dynamic EQ. That's just trying to bring it down at this section, but then also trying to create a little bit of air in that very, very, very high-end register. Yes, so then moving on, as I was talking about the bass, before I got sidetracked, it's just adding a little bit more body that wasn't there here in the context. I take that out. Just a little bit of a boost. I think, yes, so with the EQ here, by taking out the low end, I was trying to tame the kick, basically. But that also meant that I was taking out the bass. So in this section, in this recording that I had here, it was, I don't think the bass was very prominent, so I just added it in there. And then over here, after the breakdown section, I've got a little acid line to keep it a little bit more interesting. So we've got... So this is just, yeah, just using volume to kind of like rise everything in, not necessarily starting everything in like from the start, basically. From the start of the bar, just making everything kind of like flow and like over each other. That was the idea behind all this sort of stuff with the, with the whole track, really. And then so I've got a little recording from my Digitone over here. And the goal of this was to just create a bit of progress with the track, because not progress, but just like development of the idea. Hear it now. It's quite cool. And then I was having the original recording. I think I just wanted a little bit more control of the high-end percussion. So I added in like an extra hi-hat, and then I added in some shakers. So this is what these sound like. And this is what they sound like in context. If I take them out, it's passable, but just that extra little bit of, because I've used the same hi-hat sample from the original recording. It creates this phasing thing, and I mean, some people don't really want that, but in this case, I did want that because it sounded kind of cool. Yeah, and then down the bottom here, I've got Ambience. I always use Ambience in the background, and I've got several layers of it here. Several. I've got 3. So the first one sounds like this. Not exactly sure what that sample is, but it is definitely a sample. And then I've got this very, very quiet piano sort of thing, which is just accentuating the melody in context. You can hear it better over here, actually. Or maybe even the end here. Yeah. So yeah, it's just this bit here. Just very, very subtle, and then a little bit of tape down the bottom here as well, just to round it out and like have a little bit of a noise floor. Of low, I think it's a high shelf. No, it's a low shelf. I put a low shelf here as well because I did want to retain some of the low end. I'm not a big fan of high pass filtering everything unless it's for an effect. I've put some hot tubes on here for a bit of saturation just to bring up some elements. And then this, oopsie, call product fail. Well, that had a vinyl preset on it. Don't know why that's happening. And then I've sidechained that as well and added a tiny bit of width. So in terms of the processing of all of this stuff and the sound design, making the drums like that, I basically made like a 4-bar pattern on my Digitakt, which, yeah, like it was 4 bars, but then because with the Digitakt and the Electron stuff, you can do like conditional trigs or conditional notes, which can happen at certain intervals. So every time the loop goes through, you can have a snare happen every 2 times. So it'll be like, psh, and then it'll come around, psh. So you can make like a pretty simple pattern evolve and do some pretty like interesting things, which you can't really do with Ableton unless you use their new sequences. But to do it in MIDI would mean that you would end up having a MIDI file that is just this bloody long. Too much to think about for me. So using Electron stuff for that reason is really, really good to create, more dynamic evolving sequences. So with the drums, you can just hear them by themselves, like pretty much over here. I chopped up I first had a really, really good sine wave kick that had a little bit of bit reduction and sample rate reduction on there as well, which gave it a little bit more high-end content, which you can kind of hear. And then I had a tom drum on top of that, which would have been like maybe, it sounds like a 909, something like that. And then I had a break sample that I chopped up. So just to give context, I've got my Digitakt over here. So I had let me just check if that is on screen. Okay, yeah, we're all good. I had my kick on this one. I had my break sample on this one. I chopped up a break, which you can kind of hear on here. Maybe it's better over here. And then I think it was mostly for the snare and maybe for like a few like incidental little bits. And then I would have had like a clap here, and I would have had a tom here, and then I would have had like a clap here as well. So that's like the crux of everything. And then I would have had my vocal sample over here, and then two of my hi-hat sort of sounds on these two trigs. And then as I'm playing, as the track is going, I'm like hitting these and muting them as I go. I actually can't really show this because I don't have enough power plugs right now, but these light up green. You like play around with them, you'll be able to see it in the video. That's how you create like a bit more of a dynamic performance. And yeah, that was like the crux of it. So in my main group over here, I don't have any processing, that's just for grouping it, but the processing on the main I did show you. I chucked some soothe on it, because if you've heard me rabbit on about this sort of stuff, that's not going to open now, is it? That's great. The soothe is basically a plugin that just helps you take off nasty frequencies. Dynamically, you can use dynamic EQ like Pro Q to do that, but for really eliminating high-end nasty stuff, it helps to use soothe very subtly. I haven't really got much processing on here except for like a little bit of tape, which when I use it, I would have just, maybe it did like a little bit of EQing over here, but I generally just keep it as is, just because it adds just like a slight smearing of the signal, and like it just separates it in a nice stereo kind of way, and just tames a little bit of the high end and stuff. So this is what it sounds like without. Oopsie, let's go here. And then with. Super subtle, just helps it sit a little bit more. And then I've processed these, just because they are from the original recording, I've processed them like pretty similarly. That really doesn't need to be there. Process them kind of similarly here. This will be a question for me as well. Console. Let's have a look here. Okay, console actually is not relevant in this case. Let's not even think about that. Console is just a VST from Air Windows, and it's not actually connected to anything. You need to have console connected to your master bus for it to do anything, so that's just nothing really. I'll go down to the processing, the resample here, a little bit of chucked some tape on there, and then did some warm tube effect on there just for a bit of saturation. That's what it sounds like without. And then with. Again, super subtle. It's got 2 dB of drive on there, so really, really subtle. And then this has been sidechained to the, I've got a sidechain channel down here, which is just like sending out a pulse. It just means because I don't actually have a kick recorded, I've just got that buzzing away over here to link and sidechain the the signals to a kick. I don't know why I overcomplicated that. I kind of got lost about what I was talking about. And then like this like white noise, a little bit of tube, a little bit of EQ. I've done a. If I take that off. Oops. If I take that off. Okay, so there was quite a lot of low end content there. So the reason that I used a high pass filter was just to take that out because it was just, I think it was just too much. Same for the paper towel, little riser thing, and then again delay, very little processing. The bass, I did a big fat boost in the high end because it was just not coming through enough. And look, it is just peaking way too much over there because I've got like 24 dB of drive. But I don't know, I really, maybe an engineer will tell me that that's a bad thing to do, but I mean, it sounds good, so I really don't care. The acid line over here, in terms of processing, this was actually kind of hard to do because the first time that I did the recording, in the first demos that I was making of it and showing to people, oh God, they didn't have this filter on it, and it was making it so that there was just too much low end, and it was just sounding like really, really muddy. So this is what it sounds. This is what it used to sound like. I'll take that. Oops, take that down. Yeah. In the context, it sounded a bit muddy and crap, so I did a big fat high pass filter, and when if I'm using filtering, I use it to get that to give a boost to the frequency that I'm cutting off from. So I've got like a 24 dB boost, or a little like notch there to accentuate that bit, so you have that like nice filter like fock to it. So great acid sound for that, like that, great for acid stuff. Cuts to a lot better. And again, without those. And then without. Yeah, so that is that. There's a little bit of, I've got some more saturation, some erosion. Erosion is great for getting that like little bit of dustiness on a sound. And on. Yeah, just add a little bit of hair to it, you know? We all want a little bit of hair. Now, and then for the digitone little sample over here, there's just like, oh, this is not going to work, is it? Okay, thanks for not giving me a guilt trip. Got a compressor. And the reason I put a compressor on, actually, I know what this is. I do this sometimes just to shape like a transient image, or sorry, a transient sound a little bit more. Just having like a tiny like 1 or 2 dB reduction with these settings, 30 millisecond attack, very, very fast release, and just a tiny 2 ratio. It just gives a little bit of like a peak to it and a drop, rather than just like a. So yeah, that's why I do that. I do that sometimes on percussion. There may be some examples of that here. No, oh yeah, I've done that with this one here as well. So I take that off, and then back on. It's a very subtle, just adds the transient without having to use a transient shaper. And then we've got some, so the hi-hat really, that's the processing, not really anything interesting there. And then your EQ, I've added some delay to get that stereo image. This is the Haas effect. So let's have a listen to this. And then without. You'll probably notice it's smack down the middle if you're listening on headphones. But then I've added this delay, 100% wet, no feedback, 1 millisecond and 15 millisecond here. What this does is it makes, the Haas effect is basically your perception of mono is dictated by the time it takes for that image to hit one ear. So if it's by your ear, so if there's a difference between the left and the right, it means you're going to get that stereo image. Whereas like if you're getting the sound coming equally to both ears, your ears will just assume it's coming down the middle. So that is a little bit of physics for you, I guess. And then ambience. What have we got? Ambience. We've got some. I think I went through this before. Cool. In terms of I've got some return effects over here. I've got some spring. Very, very tight, just to create a bit of room. Take that off. This sounds pretty boring without it. Any of these, actually. Then I add the return effects. Pretty handy. So on the spring, is it a spring reverb? To Valhalla room. Yeah, very, very, 0.45 second. No pre-delay or anything like that. I don't really use this that much, so I'm not exactly sure what's going on here, but it's just a really, really tight room verb, and then we've got some tape on there and some warm tube and then some EQ just so it doesn't get muddied up. And then I've done the same for the delay over here as well. Using Supermassive. Not a crazy, I haven't even got any modulation or anything or maybe I do. I haven't really got anything crazy going on there. And then we've got another delay over here, which isn't a delay, it's actually just a very fat reverb. So sometimes in my tracks I'll have a tight reverb, and then I'll have generally a dotted eighth delay, and then I'll have a big reverb for those big drop festival moments. That really adds a lot of space. I take that out. Back in. Just sends it right into space. These buses are quite important because without them, it's too up in your face. There's everything is sitting too up in your face. It's all sitting right here. So you want to try and create some 3D depth, And then on the master, what have I got? I've put a reverb. This is probably for let me just have a look at where that is. Okay. I've used the reverb here. Does exactly what you think it would do on the master channel. I've got a little bit of this compressor on here as well. It's barely doing anything. It's just, sometimes it's to create a little bit more bounce and groove to the track. I wouldn't really recommend doing too much compression on the end. But then sometimes I would say just use whatever you want to do. By doing a compressor like this on the master channel, it means that you can sculpt those kind of bumps and transients and stuff, and kind of makes it like glue a little bit. It glues everything together but also creates like a little bit more transient detail. And look, it's very, very subtle. Like, it's barely hitting like 1 or 2 dB there. I've got a little bit of satin on the end here just for a bit of drive. Take it off. And then back on. Actually, that was a bad spot because I think there was a changeover, but again, just a little bit of saturation. What we're on? We're on 10%. And then a bit of EQ here. These are all just problem frequencies. So 300 is generally a pretty shitty zone for mud, and this is also a pretty good zone to get deaf. So just bring that down a bit. And then we have Bloom on the end of it. I use Bloom, I've mentioned it in another video, but Bloom is basically just like a dynamic EQ compressor, something. It is magic, basically. I put it on the end of buses. I put it on the end of the master channel as well. It just does these like nice settings to separate your EQs and process things like from the side and for the sides and for the mids. This is what it sounds like without. This is what it sounds like with. Very, very subtle. And then I've got a clipper on the end of this for some reason. Yeah, I've got clippers on the end of your channel. They basically, what is it good for? Let me just remember. So having a clipper on like your master channel or on like any channels or whatever, it's just like a nicer way of processing or catching peaks. I guess there is a better way of explaining that. I'm sure someone has a good video. I've only just started really using clipping for tracks, but it's a good way to lift the volume of a track without by still retaining some like transient information, and by like lifting the volume enough. I'm mincing this at the moment, but yeah, they are handy basically. This is what it sounds like. I'll put that down to. Show what I'll do. That's what it sounds like without. Ooh, that is not correct. Hang on, sorry for blowing your ears off. This is what it sounds like without. So it's peaking at 11, and then we put this on. Okay, it's actually not really doing a whole lot here, but it's the main way that you kind of like use this and like saturation in general is that you're lifting the signal, you're lifting up all like the untouched parts of the sound and bringing it up to the forefront, which is kind of the opposite of compression, where you're squashing everything that's there into like a little cube. So kind of think of it like when you're using Photoshop, or like when you're on your phone and you're doing your gram posts from like 2013, and you're oversaturating everything, and it brings out all like these weird like purples and like oranges and stuff. It's kind of like very similar to saturation, but with a clipper, it puts a ceiling on it. And yeah, with my music, it's about creating especially like digitally, it's about creating those ceilings in the tracks and creating like rooms for the sound to sort of like splash against in a tasteful way. So yeah, that's the track in terms of like the sound design with the synth. Let's get to that. So I've got the original recording of the peak. Okay, Max is going to be joining us now. Hello, Max. Say hello to everyone. This is the original recording of the peak. What's going on? So I was like playing around with the tuning of the oscillators and stuff. Now, in terms of sound design, so what I had was I made the synth by using a few like LFOs, and I made it so that the LFOs were operating independently of every voice in the track, or every voice on the synth. So every time that a note was played, the LFO would be starting at a different point, and it would be connected to, I think it was connected to the LFO was modulating into like the filter, or like the tuning, or like the yeah, just something like that. Max, no, you can't go on the table. Come on, come over here. You need to go over, yes. Sorry, cat stuff. No, not on the table. You gotta go that way. No, go that way, go that way. So every time that the note would come in, it would kind of be fluctuating at different rates, and I key tracked it to the filter, and I think I also modulated it so that it kind of has this like trill to it. So just everything, it basically means that like each note that you play is going to be starting from a different point. It's going to kind of feel like an orchestra, really, instead of just playing like 8 flat notes that are all doing the same thing. They're all got this like kind of weird, different starting points, starting with different filters, different like intensity of the rate max. You really can't go on the table. So yeah, that's kind of how you do that's how I made the peak. I found it quite difficult to do with VSTs like on Ableton. I know it's like definitely very possible, but that's basically the principle behind it. So a little bit of detuning, a little bit of chorus, reverb, delay. Yeah, I think it was like sawtooth for the most part. Like maybe just 2 oscillators. There's a really good Vicky Tinez video on him using the peak, and he talks about different ways of like modulating it and stuff. And I would highly recommend. I'll put it in the comments of the description of how you can sort of like make a synth like that. But I basically just did it based on Ricky Tinez. So shout out to you, Mr. Tinez. So how did I actually like go about composing this? Well, I'd like to tell you. It takes like the format of just like intro here with basic elements. Oh, Max. Just slowly dropping in every element. So yeah, synths are coming in here, and then a little bit more intensity. And I'm chopping the vocal sample in and out here. Playing around with the synth and the Digitakt. So it just has this like big kind of like crescendo into this build up here, which I'll show you. Forgot to make that adjustment again. Oopsie, I've just gone back into the file, that's why this is... Forgot to save my... Let's do that one more time. So I had like, a lot of that was just from like the Octatrack, but then I did this little bit here. Little trick. Yeah, I mean, that's why I like playing around with audio, because you can just do all these like little funky reverse, like tuning, screw around sort of things, which is like super fun. And then basically just sort of like, it has this crescendo in this middle bit here. It moves on to like a little bit of like a freak out jam here. And then from here, it's basically like we're going down the mountain. So we're introducing like the acid element back in again. We're introducing a melody, and yeah, we're just like petering out. Like we've gone on the journey, guys. We've ascended the mountain. It's time to go home. And we finally get to the end, which is just... And then finishing on like a high note, like literally. I thought that was a cool little thing that I did. Instead of finishing on like a dun, 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 dun. Phrase doesn't finish, so just kind of trying to get out of like the 4x4, like loopy sort of stuff. So yeah, I mean, yeah, song structure wasn't really that complicated. Yeah, it's just really like lift, crescendo, break, fall down the mountain, freak out section, congratulating you on the way down, and then finally having a little rest at this part over here. That's probably a good way to think about it. So I think maybe, like, I mean, I didn't actually think about this when I was making the track, but if you can kind of create like you can kind of like write down a story or write down like a line of how you want to create the track and compose the track, like where the energy is going to be, or even just like describing it like that, like that's, I mean, it works. Like I'm doing it for an EP at the moment. I'm creating this, like, just coming to like a bit of a creative halt, and then I was like, maybe I should just like create a story, create like a narrative, create a bit more depth to this story, and then it means that like being able to flesh out like another 3 or 4 more tracks for the EP. So keep an eye on that one. I hope that this, if you have any other questions about this, like I'll probably be doing a few of these, like a few extra details on my Instagram if I have missed anything. But yeah, let me know what you think. Until later, ciao for now. I really hope that's not my sign off. That sucks.